Hey everybody, so I have a 2001 Toyota Tacoma regular cab, standard cab, with the bench seat, and I am removing it and swapping out for buckets. So as you can see right here, I have the bench seat removed. It was 4 bolts, easy peasy. Actually, the most difficult part of this whole process was just getting the seat belts through the seat. I had to struggle a little bit, like rocking the seat back and forth to get that. Okay, on this side, I have a Tacoma double cab passenger seat. I'm gonna put it in, but first I was lining it up to make sure the bolt holes would work. This hole in the back here, that's where I removed the stock seat belt, but only because this bench seat has a seat belt receiver on it from a 2003 extra cab, and that seat belt receiver is the same as my bench seat, so that is going to work with my seat belt. That was one of the biggest things that was apparent with all my research, is that the seat belts were going to be tricky. So I wanted to make sure I got a seat out of the same year model-ish. So 2000 to 2004 Tacomas are pretty much plug and play. As you'll notice, this back bracket doesn't face down, it faces sideways. When I flip it, you can see that it faces the console, the hump. So I cut away the carpet, and you can see right there that there's a little plug, and I'm gonna try to get that out of there. It looks like it's just plastic. I'm gonna try to get that plug out of there so I can bolt this seat in. The other 3 bolts line up just right. So that's the pin. The bolt hole goes in front. And then I cut this away because it was a bench seat, so it only had 1 rail on either side. There are holes pre-drilled for buckets in this truck. So this is the process. Got to cut the carpet in 2 spots, not too bad. As soon as I get that plug bored out, I'll show you what it looks like. But remember that these rails can slide separately, so you want to make sure that you've got them in the right spot on the holes. I'll show you that in a few minutes. Okay, so I dug away at it a little bit, and it looks like the hole was just coated in plastic and not plastic all the way through, so that's something I'm gonna have to drill. I'm gonna get up under the truck and see what it looks like right now. Looks like that's where the seatbelt was, and I think the hole that I have to tap out is gonna end up being here. So I'm gonna put a lock nut on the back of it and Loctite it once I get that through. Make sure I have a sealed up. Okay, so it's all drilled out. I'm gonna try to thread it in, get this seat all situated. So there are like no good angles to film this from, so this is kind of the best I got. We'll see how it goes. Okay, I'll pop this in here, just kind of wiggle it. Again, these tracks are separate, so you can kind of hold this up and move them until they pop in. So I got 2. One here, See how this back track is looking. Okay, it's off quite a bit, so I'm gonna hold this up. I'm just gonna kind of wiggle it till it goes sideways. Got a pretty solid lean on it. It's pretty much lined up. Get these down as far as I can. Very excited for these buckets to go in. My wife won't have to sit in the dashboard anymore. All right, there's one. Just getting this back one hand tightened, so I'm leaning into it, making sure it's in as much as I can get it. Put the socket on it by itself, hand tightening it that way. Sometimes you can get a little more leverage. See if I can get in there with the ratchet. I will show you the last bolt in a second. This is the last front bolt. Hand tightening in right there. Pretty happy that under the carpet there was a perfect spot for this to pop right in. It also helps that I did my research. This bucket seat is out of a double cab Tacoma from 2003. And I had a regular cab Tacoma from 2001. Okay, so that right there is my last bolt hole. And I think I'm gonna have to put a nut on the back of this thing, but we're gonna try to get it in as much as we can. Anyway. I can get it, and then I'm going to put a nut on the back side of it. You can see that right there. And again, that's where the seatbelt bolted in. Down there. That is one of my bucket seats. Okay. Nice slide action. Fits in there nice. Get my thing closed. Ooh, yeah. That is a sizable amount of legroom. Look at this. This is nice. Oh, that's so roomy. Yep, this goes here. Clicks in perfectly to the seatbelt receiver that was already on this. I can pull this seat all the way up if I wanted to, and there's all this room behind. But my wife is definitely not going to want to do that, so I don't think I'm going to put a console in here. So I've got cup holders here. I've got 2 more cup holders here. I don't think I need to. Okay, now it's time to put in the driver's side seat. For this one, I wanted something with a little more support than the Tacoma bucket seats, so I went with a 97 SR5 4Runner front seat with lumbar support. So we'll see how those bolts line up. I'm guessing not perfectly. Might need to do some modification. Let me grab the seat. Okay. Actually, in fairly decent condition for being a pick and pull grab yesterday. I got both these bucket seats for 65 bucks. I'm gonna try to thread the existing seatbelt receiver from the truck that is currently bolted to the floor through this paneling here, and so I can use it for my seat. And this is a beige seat, and it'll have a little more comfort than the passenger seat. Okay, as you can see, I took the paneling, trim panel off my seat, and I think I'm gonna just go ahead and take the seatbelt. I'm gonna go ahead and take the seatbelt out of the floor just so it's easier to thread, although I gotta watch out for that. I can unplug it right now It's tucked, there's a 2-prong plug that sits in there, and that's the sensor for the seatbelt. It's the thing that blinks and tells you your seatbelt's not working, or is. But I think I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna leave it plugged in, just so I can work with this a little easier, try to get this all in place. Now it looks like this should bolt in to the side where the other one was, so I'm gonna have to drill another hole there. This front, I'm gonna have to pop in here, and I'm gonna have to cut this carpet away. And then the opposite front, I'm gonna need to do a little bending. I'll show you in a second what the bracket looks like. I'm hoping that back hole lines up just right. So here goes nothing. I take it back. I am gonna unplug the seatbelt because I'm gonna have to thread that through here. Then I'm gonna have to put that trim panel back on. It'll just be much easier to move the seatbelt around if it's not plugged in and tethered to the floor there. So I'm gonna set my camera up and hopefully you'll be able to see all of this. I lost my tripod, left it at work somewhere or something, so hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. Just gonna push this back a little bit, and if you can see it, hopefully it's in focus. Get this going here. You can see this little prong there. Just gonna push that in. Push that prong in and pull up, and voila! Now my seatbelt's disconnected, and all I have to do is plug that prong back in when I'm ready to go. So give me a few minutes. I'm gonna see if I can get this in. I'm gonna leave this middle console seatbelt on there just in case I find a better bucket seat at some point in the future. I can put this back with the bench and whatnot. So yeah. Okay. All right, I just basically laid the seatbelt across. This is the one I'm gonna be using. Laid it across and then just put this panel over the top of it. So it's not like bolted onto the seat or anything. It's gonna be bolted into the floor where it originally was for safety. In case these seat brackets don't line up perfectly, I wanna be bolted to the car and not the seat that might break apart. So safety first. All right, trying to get this camera. This is like the hardest part of this whole tutorial thing. Just trying to get this friggin' camera set up so you guys can see what I'm doing. So my bolt hole is here, and I'm gonna have to cut through the carpet. There's all this insulation behind this, so it's actually kind of a pain in the ass to cut through. It's like fluffy, like that shit that mice make nests out of. It's insulation. Probably to keep, all right, and there's it's probably to keep road noise down, but it's irritating to work with. Okay, I'm gonna get in close. Hopefully you can see this. So I zoom in. There's the little spot that I gotta drill through. All right, I just got it drilled out. You can see the ground behind there. Okay. One more quick note about drilling that hole right there is just on the other side of that, like very close, within an inch on the other side of that piece of metal, are some important looking, what I think are brake lines. That's the hole I drilled, and these, yeah, are some brake lines. So be very careful. Drill very shallow when you go through that. Don't plunge it through because you will nick those. So there is a hole there, pre-threaded and everything. That's right next to the console. And you can see it's quite a bit off, but also I haven't played around with the rails. This I bent. I'm gonna have to bend it back a little bit because it's too short between this bracket and this bracket. So I'm gonna unbend this a bit. Initially this was flat out 90-degree angle, and I kind of hit it with a hammer and then I took a pry bar to it and it bent here rather than down here. So I'm gonna hopefully unbend this a little bit so it'll stretch out the distance between those two brackets and I can get this hole in. I'm having a little trouble getting some bolts to line up. Right now I'm busy kind of tweaking this bracket. I'm trying to get it to twist inward towards the center so it'll reach that bolt better. And this one, I bent too far, so now I'm trying to bend it back. These two I'm going to leave alone because I think they'll go once the other ones go, but just a note to see how these brackets move separately. Is that, it's there, this is here, but if I have them depressed, I should be able to move one without the other. It's like skis, is how somebody described it. So you can adjust how the bolt holes are going to line up with just moving one of these at a time. That should help temper some frustrations. Okay, so I got that guy to line up. This guy needs to be kind of just beat down. And that guy's bolted in. That guy's in. And the seatbelt. I might cut some of this plastic off the seatbelt just at the bottom so it can move around this area a little bit better. Beat the crap out of that with this baby sledgehammer. I hope it bends down enough to where that hole, oh, well, you can't see it. That one. Okay, that didn't take long at all. The few serious smacks from that baby sledgehammer, now the holes pretty much line up. So I'm gonna bolt that in. Okay, there you have it. From bench to buckets. 2 different buckets, but I got them in. That's the seat belt bolted to the floor down there, all plugged in, so the sensors should still work. I just ran it up. I cut the plastic off of that and got rid of the second center console seat belt so it fits a little bit better, and then just smashed it in there and bolted it on. Be careful if you cut the plastic off because these wires aren't guarded in any way, shape, or form under that plastic, so it's going to be real easy to slice through them if you're not careful. Luckily, I didn't learn that the hard way. There's my lumbar support. Pretty excited. So yeah, let me go around the other side. Here we go. 2001 Toyota Tacoma bench seat to bucket seat modification.